So, hello, I'm Nicholas. I've got about 40 minutes to talk to you about the curve. And the curve is about this. How do you make money when everything is going free? We have people in the room who market brands, some of which don't feel as if they are viable to digital disruption. I look forward to talking about flour and how that is how that fits within this. But a lot of the work comes originally from digital content. I'm particularly focused on games, as Justin mentioned, and books as well. And the games industry has been at the forefront of figuring out how to give stuff away for free and still make bucket loads of money. And that was the genesis of the curve for me. It started out as a game theory, then it became a digital content theory. And then as I worked through the book with my agent and my publisher, we started seeing that it actually seemed to work across almost anything where the brand wants to talk to its customers in a digital way. Or to put it another way, anything, which was helpful in terms of market reach for the book. So we definitely jumped on that opportunity as soon as we could. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to a 2-minute video, which is part of my free strategy, paid for by Penguin, and it will give you the basic overview to what it is I'm about to talk about for the next little while. How do you make money when everything is going free? If you make music or games, books or television, you've been struggling with this for years. But what about those of you who make swimming pools, or flour, or manufacture lemon squeezers in China? Free is coming to you too, as digital printing and 3D manufacturing brings casual piracy to the world of physical products. Are you scared yet? You should be excited too, because the thing that is destroying the value of everything you hold dear is also giving you an unprecedented chance to build your business or to finance the creation of your art. To understand that, you need to understand the curve. The curve is a new way of seeing the world that shows us not to be afraid of giving some things away for free. Your customers and fans are getting things for free, legally or illegally, anyway, and this is your opportunity. Because the web allows you to build one-to-one relationships with those customers and fans. It allows newcomers to experience what you do for free, while allowing your biggest supporters to spend lots of money on things they truly value. And as customers and fans ourselves, the curve shows us how our relationship with the artists, creators and companies we love is about to change, allowing us to focus on the things that we really value. The curve comes in 3 parts. Use free to find an audience, use technology to figure out what that audience values, and to move them along the curve from freeloaders to superfans. And let your biggest fans spend lots of money, and I do mean lots, on things they really value. The curve solves the pressing problem of the digital age, how to make money when everything is tending towards free. I'm Nicholas Lovell. Join me to explore the curve. So I've introduced you to the curve. You don't need to read the book. You obviously need to read the book, but you've got the basic ideas now. And what I want to do in the next 40 minutes is dig a little bit deeper into some specific examples and stories, which hopefully will lodge in your heads and help you think a little bit more about how to apply these ideas to your brands. I'm relieved to see that the curve and the material that's just been presented basically matches, which is always a good thing that happens at one of these events. When I start talking to my clients, there's 3 things which they typically say to me. The first one is you can't make money from apps, particularly content people. The second is we've got to start making people value content again. And the third is I deserve to be paid for my work. And what I normally say is, yes, you can, no, you can't, no, you don't. They really don't like that last one in the content world. Because I think the world has changed, and these days you have to earn the right to be paid for your content. There is so much stuff out there that people can access, whether or not that's me as a content creator creating free stuff, which I do a lot of, creating paid stuff, which a lot of content creators do, or whether or not it's brands doing content marketing and competing head-on with us. And they don't expect to charge for this stuff, and we do, and that's a problem for us. So it's no longer the case that just because I built a thing, you have to pay me for it. I have to make you want to give me money for some reason. Quite a lot of that has very little to do with the content itself, as we'll discover. I spent a lot of time in the games world. Most of my work recently has been in the world of free-to-play games. Angry Birds Go is the game I can talk about that I've worked on most recently. But I've been doing this for about 5 5 years in the free sense and 15 years in the non-free sense. Before that, I used to be an investment banker, but I try not to talk about that anymore. I'm going to talk a little bit about games first. So who recognises this? Put your hand up if you recognise that. Who's played this? Keep your hand up if you've played it. Who's got past level 35? Level 50? Level 100? 150? 200? 208? 208? No, I win. Hooray. Oh, no, I don't. There's somebody at the back who's better than me. So this is obviously Candy Crush Saga. Your son's played it. Your mother and your grandmother may well have played it. 250 million people played this in the last month. 93 million people played it yesterday. It's the single most popular game in the world. It's not absolutely representative in the same way that understanding music by thinking about Gangnam Style or books by thinking about 50 Shades is not a terribly useful way of understanding how the entire industry works. But it is an illustration of a business that has reached all of those people, and the game is free. It's given away for free on Facebook and on the App Store. The game made $1.4 billion in revenue last year, but only 4% of people gave it any money. The company behind it, King, which is British-Swedish, floated in New York for a $7 billion valuation, which promptly fell to $5 billion. I said I used to be an investment banker. I wrote a blog post which said, this thing isn't worth more than $5 billion, and I felt quite happy when it fell to almost exactly the number I'd said. But it's for those of you who are old enough to live through the bubble, the dot-com bubble, this isn't a bubble business. There's a tiny bit of frothy valuation in there, but this is a business that has an enormous number of customers, some of whom are giving it an enormous amount of money. Does anybody recognise this game? Anybody? It's called Clash of Clans. It's the fighting Farmville, if somebody said Farmville. It's basically Farmville, but with barbarians and wizards, and you beat each other up a lot more. So this is also free. It's from a Finnish company called Supercell. This company recently sold a 50% stake in its business to Gung Ho of Japan for $3 billion. For $1.5 billion, valuing the company at $3 billion. Supercell's last numbers I can remember were quarterly numbers. They made $180 million in revenue and a bit less, and $106 million in profit. So again, a business that is profitable and very profitable on the back of a free strategy. And this isn't a fluke. These are the top grossing iPhone apps. This chart's slightly out of date. Those are the free ones. Apple's one of the only services which lists a content product not by how popular it is, but how much money it makes, which is a slightly unusual strategy. But those are the top 30 most revenue generating games. The ones in red, apps. The ones in red are the games that are free. The ones in blue are the apps that are free. Dating is in there very heavily, though not Tinder. The games industry never talks about Tinder. The advertising industry is obviously very different to my normal crowd. So the heart behind all of this is, look, free obviously works. Free isn't just a marketing strategy. I mean, free is just a marketing strategy and not always the best one. But free is a marketing strategy, but it's not the end point. The important bit for all of these companies is that they've flipped their thinking. They've started by going, how can I find an audience? Well, clearly free is very, very helpful. But I need to make money, and I've given this thing away for free. And the important bit is to flip your thinking, to say it's very easy to understand how the web has made it possible to reach an audience with stuff that is freely shared that wasn't possible before. If you work in digital content, you see that as a terrifying opportunity, or threat rather. But the other thing it's done, and a lot of what we've talked about this morning, is it has enabled cost-effective one-to-one relationships. I can understand my customers through data or just through menu choices, through, they can navigate their own way through their relationship with me, which enables me to segment them and to start offering stuff which they truly value. So there's the curve. It's every person in the world lined up. Take the thing you're selling and peer magically inside their head and go, how much do you value this thing that I'm selling? The slightly depressing thing for most of us is pretty well nobody values it at all. This line carries on forever. 7 billion people, the number of people who like what you do is a rounding error. But at this end, we have people who would happily pay $1 for your app, or $10 for your book, or $15 for your DVD, or $40 for your game. And all the way up here, we've got people who would pay a lot more, but previously we had no mechanism to enable them to do that. It was too cost inefficient to find the superfans and the brands, and we tended to use them as brand advocates rather than as people who would give us money. I mean, a really clear example of this comes from football. I mean, free is kind of impossible unless you freeload on your mates. But, you go to the pub and you buy a pint, you subscribe to watch the football, you subscribe to Sky, you buy a ticket to a match or a season ticket and you start adding strips in, you get a box, and all the way up here you're Roman Abramovich and you buy Chelsea. You've got a complete kind of journey of how, I mean, football, one of the problems I see with football actually as no football fan is that it's been so good at responding to the superfan opportunity that one of the primary defences against people giving away the thing which you have of value for free is to move further up this curve in terms of allowing superfans to spend money, and football's already done that. So as piracy and threat and competition comes to the television end, the classic defences which I see, which is moving further up this curve, are going to be harder for them to do, not because they can't be done, but because they've already done them brilliantly, which is a very unfortunate place for a brand or a category to be in. So what I see is that the free end is the marketing opportunity, the top end is the revenue opportunity, but they are connected, and that was back to the digital living room and the connection with people that you were talking about. It's part of a coherent strategy. So that's the curve. As you know, because you paid attention to the video, it comes in 3 parts. Find an audience, probably using free. Use technology to figure out what they value and how to talk to, and earn the right to talk to them again. And enable superfans. I'm going to talk a little bit about each one. When I talk about finding an audience, everybody thinks that I'm the free guy, but I'm not actually a freetard. I'm not that fixated on free as a strategy in its own right. It does a job. If the best way of finding an audience is to say you have to pay to come through the door, that might be fine. There's certain categories of goods, Veblen goods, where the more expensive they are, the more valuable they become. The supply-demand curve inverts, as it were. And I think there's an entire strategy which says we shouldn't do this stuff for free. One of the most important things to think about in free is that, where do I start from basic principles? Don't give away for free something which is expensive for you to do each time. Give away for free something which is expensive for you to create once and trivially cheap for you to give away again and again. I had a conversation with an advertising agency who says we do too much free stuff, and I said I doubt it. And what it turned out was that they did lots of free of their core work. That was the stuff they did for free. What they didn't do was invest a real amount of money into something which could be shared by 1 million people at no further cost than if they only shared it with one person. They did lots and lots of bespoke free work. And that's not the heart of the curve. The heart of the curve is, 1, take advantage of free, easy, cheap, frictionless sharing. If there are any retailers in the room, I was told earlier this week that UK retailers have 90 billion page views in the UK every year, and all the newspapers and magazines added together have only 35 billion page views. So retailers are clearly a content business, whether or not that's just their catalogue or whether or not it's actually true content marketing. They're already doing this, but not necessarily thinking about it. Well, some of them are, but not all of them are thinking about it as this clear and coherent content strategy. So let's dig a little bit deeper. I want to talk about the value of freeloaders. I've been told freeloaders is a loaded term, so I'm going to change it to followers. I quite like being a freeloader, but it turns out ordinary people don't. So I'm going to have to change it. In fact, it's changed on the cover of the book at my publisher's insistence to followers rather than freeloaders, so I must change my deck. There are 4 or 5 different ways that freeloaders, followers, are valuable to you. The first and obvious one is they are a source of revenue. If this person is never going to give you money, then how can you make money from them in a different way? So if you've got a lot of volume, you can do advertising. You can say, this customer is never going to buy, so let me sell him to somebody where he will buy from. And those are kind of classic and well-known tropes. I'm not going to dig deep into it because it's not at the heart of the curve, but also it requires you to have volume. I built a business called Games Brief, which has 20,000 readers a month, about people who want to make money from making free-to-play games. I mean, it's quite a niche audience. And so I don't worry. I mean, we do have some ads, although we've basically stopped trying to sell them because it was much more interesting to get the people who wanted to move along the curve to buy my books and then to buy my consultancy and to buy my time and in some cases give me equity for my time, which has potential to be right at the top end if I'm lucky. All of those are things which work better in a curve strategy. And the advertising model is well known and requires volume. If you have volume, go do it. That's fine. I'm not against advertising, but it's not something which I can uniquely talk about. So I'm going to move on from that relatively quickly. Word of mouth, brand advocacy, brand engagement. In my world of games, it's so expensive to acquire a customer. We have to spend $2 to pay a customer to play our free game. So just get that around your head. The world of advergaming, I don't know if you're excited by advergaming, I'm not, because it generally means you are spending less money than highly sophisticated people to make a game which you will give away for free, while your competitors, i.e. real game companies, are paying $2 to buy that customer. And about 5 years ago, maybe 10, then you could say it's free. It didn't matter that it was rubbish, it's free. And now all of these awesome games are free. It's a much harder place to be. And advergame in its own right is a very challenged strategy because of finding the audience. Having said all of that, in my world of games, the number of people who download a game is one of your most important marketing tools because it drives your position in the charts. We've talked a lot about word of mouth, of triggering people to do a referral or social media promotion as soon as they buy something. All of your free customers have that potential, and in a world where it costs you $2 to acquire a customer, every single person who brings a friend in is worth $2 to me. You know, that can add up very, very quickly. There are also potential converts. We used to sort of say, well, if somebody hasn't bought in the first 30 days, all these 30-day trials, free subscriptions, everything else, pay up or bugger off. But we're now in a world where it's so expensive to acquire those customers and, not always true, but usually true, incredibly cheap to keep servicing those customers even if they're not giving us any money, that we should hold on to them until the right moment comes to hit them with a House of Fraser sale opportunity, and suddenly they turn into a convert after 3 years. One of my hobbies is sailing, and a few years ago I was in a chandlery on Piccadilly, now defunct. The investment bankers killed that one in the credit crunch. And I was following a guy round the shop who I would have kicked out. He was wearing this filthy black T-shirt. It was sort of designed to emphasise his beer belly rather than hide it. He had this bottle of Evian with a screw-top lid, and every so often it's thick black sludge in the bottom. And every so often he would take the lid off and spit chewing tobacco into it. And I'd have kicked him out. There's no way I'd have left him in my shop. And I was behind him in the queue when he took out a black American Express card and spent £20,000. And I'd have kicked him out. You never know who your best customer is going to be. I mean, sure, we've got data, sure, we've got demographics and all of this stuff. But if it doesn't cost you anything to be in your environment, and importantly, they're not toxic to the environment for all the other potential good customers, that's an important point, which may have been wrong in that case. But if you get those things, you go, let's let this customer be in here. But one of the most important ones, this one, Gawkers, is that they provide context. One of the things which I believe is that we don't buy anything for its utility. You know, if I can invoke Maslow if you like, but we've moved so far up Maslow's hierarchy of needs that I didn't choose to wear these clothes to keep me warm and decent. I chose a lot differently about what these clothes are. I still dress a bit like an investment banker because I have to convince games companies and clients they understand numbers, and it's much quicker to do that just by wearing cufflinks than any other mechanism you can imagine. Seriously. So that's why I dress like this. And my geek credentials are relatively easy to bring out. In persuading geeks that you understand numbers, they don't know how to evaluate that. They know how to tell if you're a geek. So I dress the numbers way and then convince them of the geek stuff later. The point is that almost everything I do, the car I drive, the clothes I wear, the breakfast cereal I choose to buy, says something about me to myself and to other people. And I think that the main thing you are selling, I'm talking to marketers about this, which is a bit scary, I normally talk to non-marketers. The main thing you are selling is feelings and how people feel in a social context. And for that social context to work, you need to have people looking. Ferrari could sell cars that are quieter and less bright red, but it needs people's heads to turn as it goes past. That's one of the many things it's selling. One of the really interesting things about why now, why the curve now? Well, obviously there's free stuff, and obviously there's digital, and obviously there's free and frictionless sharing. But the biggest reason, I think, is actually Facebook. And I mean, Facebook is an illustration. 1 billion people logged into Facebook last month. That, broadly speaking, means everybody we know. What that means is that over the last 5 years, we have moved from an idea that friendship exists in the real world to the idea that friendship doesn't have to be a physical presence, it can be an online presence. And I see no surprise. I see a direct causation with this idea that we have started to believe that we have friends in the virtual world. The average person on Facebook has 150 friends, which by a coincidence is a Dunbar number, which is the number of people a human can hold in their head as members of their tribe and hold meaningful relationships with. By coincidence, I mean no coincidence at all, obviously. But that's how Facebook sort of broadly works. Who in this room reckons they've got a friend on Twitter who they've never met? Somebody who they'd call a friend? So that's not quite half, but not far off. Now that's the idea. A friend I've never met is quite a change in statement. So if you take my first starting point, which is that the stuff we choose to spend money on, we're choosing to do self-expression. We're choosing to do it for a sense of who I am. If you come into my house, in my living room downstairs, you'll see a lot of books about history and business, because I wear cufflinks. If I know you better, you'll come upstairs and you'll see my collection of Terry Pratchett's and all the Star Wars books ever written. But I have to know you better before I let you in to see that, because books are about statements and self-expression. Really interesting point about ebooks. You say that people buy more. I suspect price is an important bit of it, and the pile of shame of unread books isn't so visible, so you're more prepared to buy it. But they also fail on that who am I kind of part, which is not all of what a book is, but it's a part of it. When I was a student, I would go back to somebody's room when I'd met them, and I'd look through their record collection, see if there's any chance of long-term compatibility here or not. I don't know how students do that now. There must be some digital equivalent of peering into a playlist in Spotify or something. But that stuff really, really matters. Sure, it matters a lot more when you're 18 and you don't know who you are yet. As you get older, those expectations solidify and you become a Bowden person or something like that. But you just announce to people you're a Bowden person. I mean, that was a sense of self-expression and status, and is one of the many things they are selling. And I think that is really hard to do with no social context. It's hard to be cool if literally nobody knows that the thing you're doing is cool. Obviously, you quite like only a few people to know, because then you're early, you're a hipster. And then you go, all the hipsters are doing it, so I have to do it. So a concrete example is Santa hats. So there's a game called Kart Rider in Korea. The company's called Nexon. Not sure this is true statistic, 25% of all Koreans have played this game at least once. I mean, it's incredibly popular. It's basically Mario Kart on the PC for grown-ups. That's the basic thing. And they give the game away entirely for free, and you can buy things to wear when you're racing against up to 8 other real people. And in the run-up to Christmas, this was a few years ago, 2007, they announced they would sell Santa hats for $1. And they sold 1 million of them in a week, which is, I mean, a Santa hat, those of you who work in the art team will know how cheap that would have been to create, and $1 million, that was a great ROI on that campaign. But obviously they built the engine and the community and the world and all this other stuff, which they can't charge for because of competitive pressures, and gave it away for free. And then people say, why would you buy a Santa hat? Well, I reckon I spend more than $1 every year on feeling Christmassy, which is what you're actually paying for. I spend $1 on being the first person to have a Santa hat. Look at me, I'm awesome. Look, he's got a Santa hat. I better get one. Everybody's got a Santa hat. I really have one. I'm a grouch. Even I have to get one. You go through that sequence of processes, and everybody bought it, nothing to do with the item itself, but to do with the need for self-expression in a social context, which requires all of these gawkers and freeloaders to give that social context. And I think that is the heart of why the free piece matters. It's about creating a context in which your brand or your product exists, and then enabling people to spend within that context. That's the heart of the purpose of the reach bit. I tend to call it the free bit because it's a better shorthand, but the reach bit of the strategy. But then you move on to technology. I mean, sure, we need to understand what audiences want. You can ask them, but they lie. I mean, they don't lie, they don't know what they actually want. You need to see their behaviour as a much more interesting way. And you can calibrate it against what they say, but I would always trust data over what people say they will do, because they say what they think they ought to say rather than what they actually say. So technology is valuable for that, but this is the bit, the earning the right to talk to them again. I think content marketing is totally pointless unless it has a process of starting this relationship. Unless it goes, here is some cool stuff. Now that you've seen this cool stuff, start the process of getting permission from that customer, exactly what you were talking about, to talk to somebody again. How do you do that? I'm old enough to think email is best, largely because it can't be controlled by somebody else. What you're doing with Facebook these days is earning the right to pay Facebook to talk to them again. So I think Facebook is less useful than it used to be. I've just seen that Twitter has announced that if a Twitter user likes your brand, they will no longer automatically see your brand's tweets in their stream, which seems to me, They haven't done this yet, but it means, so I know you like the brand, but I'm not going to let you talk to them. So basically, we're on the process of earning the right to pay Twitter to talk to them again, and that will come in next year. That's my prediction, that next year that's what's going to happen. Which means each time you see a great community to talk to somebody, Facebook, now you have to pay Facebook. Twitter, now you have to pay Twitter. So go somewhere else. And it depends on your brand. I'm too old to understand Tumblr. I'm too male to understand Pinterest. I'm too married to understand Snapchat. But each of those are social networks where customers live. And your brand might belong there. It might not. But in each case, what you're trying to do is to earn the right to talk to these customers again. I personally would move them towards email, even though it's deeply old-fashioned, because there's no intermediary who can suddenly decide that you have to pay for the right to talk to these people you've expensively earned the right to talk to. But there may be other mechanisms. I leave it up to you. It depends on your brand. And then I want to talk about the third group, which is the superfans. And the superfans are the people who love what you do. And what you need to do is let people who love what you do spend lots of money on things they truly value. We need to break that down a little bit. We're sitting in a place where people are choosing to give you money. They can go somewhere and get something more cheaply. Pretty well anything they do, at a quick Google search, you can get it more cheaply. You're selling something more than just cost and utility. And at the heart of that is love. One of the reasons I think the record companies are in so much difficulty is they thought the problem was piracy, not competition. So they went, let us sue 10 million customers, because that will make them love us at just the moment we need them to love us. And it turned out they went, you know what, I hate you. And I hate you so much, I'm going to try and pirate stuff around you. And then I'm going to jump to the service that doesn't give you any money. And they started building love towards different places. And sure, it had a lot to do with free. It absolutely did. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. But the response, which says, give me money or else I'm going to hit you with a big stick, was a very flawed response towards a strategy where frictionless moving around different places was very, very easy. They also need to spend lots of money. Some of you are in physical categories where price competition will exist, but zero isn't a meaningful threat. Other people will be existing in places where zero is a meaningful threat. If, I'm going to do this easily for maths, if it used to be that 100% of people gave you $10, and now only 10% of people give you any money, you have to get $100 from all of those people on average in order to be able to make the same amount of revenue. Now, sure, there's some cost savings, but actually in practice, that's what we're trying to do. And it needs to be on things they truly value, because notwithstanding Byron Sharp stuff, I think that we are building long-term relationships with people here. You can only shaft somebody once before they hate you. And I think that we're in a process here of building long-term relationships with people, which means they have to trust you and value the thing they have. And what I want to do now is take you through a story about the sort of things people value, which aren't always what you think. Does anybody know who this is? Not the Cookie Monster, the other one. No, so this isn't a gaming crowd. So this is a guy called Tim Schafer. He makes games that nobody likes. Or at least that's what his publishers kept telling him. He said, you make games which are thoughtful and comic and point-and-click adventures where people have to think and spend time, and actually what people want to do is just pay lots of money to shoot people in the head over and over again. Can we not make those games? He went, no, I can't. That's not what I do. So basically he languished in a no-man's land through the late 90s and the early 2000s. And he said, wouldn't it be amazing? I know there are customers of mine out there. Wouldn't it be amazing if I could find them and say, look, will you give me some money to make the games I know you love? And then he turned to Kickstarter. And he said, right, I'm going to make a game that you're going to love. What is it, they said? He said, I'm not going to tell you. It's going to be a game that I used to make, and that's it. For $15, when it's ready, you'll get it. For $30, you'll get the game and a documentary of the making of the game. For $100, those were digital. You'll get a physical version of both of those things. You'll get a T-shirt which says, I backed Tim Schafer. And you'll get a special hardback book which is exclusive to this campaign. For $1,000, you get a mini portrait of you painted in the style of the game. For $5,000, you get a large piece of original artwork. And for $10,000, you have lunch with Tim Schafer. Nobody's going to have backed them in this room, are they? Nobody. I once got somebody who backed at this tier to say yes in one of these rooms, which was unexpected, but very nice for my argument. So I mentioned I was an investment banker, didn't I? So I like doing analysis. He said he wanted to raise $400,000 to do this. He made that in day one. In the 30-day campaign, he made $3.3 million. The average price was $38.28, which is just around the price you'd expect to pay for a PC game anyway. I did some digging and I went, okay, so of those 87,000 people who backed him, 48,000 were at this low $15 tier. At $30, you were 25,000 people. A spike here at $100 and the rest, whatever. So if you looked at this, you'd kind of go, these are the important people. But I then did the same analysis looking at revenue. And by revenue, you see a different picture. The people spending $100 were a third of the money. These people, who look like your most important people, only 20% of the audience. These numbers starting to add up a bit. I did it again. Of the people who spent more than $1,000, 0.1% of the pledges, and what was the number? 6% of the money. $250 was 1% of the pledges and 15% of the money. And this last one, the most important one, $100 was 15% of the people and more than half of the money. And we see that pattern repeated again and again across successful crowdfunding campaigns on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, that 15 to 20% of the people are more than half of the money. And we also see that specifically $100 is a key point. 30% of all money raised on Indiegogo comes at exactly $100. 75% comes at $50 or more. So what we're saying is that the big audience matters. The Kickstarter raised awareness and has the context. I backed at $30 because I didn't want to be a cheapskate. There are other people who backed at $250 and have immediately proudly told me how much money they spent. The game's out, and I haven't even played it because I didn't want to play the game. I wanted the game to exist. That's what I paid for. I paid to be part of a journey of something existing, not for the content itself. If I wanted the content itself, I'd wait until it came in a Steam sale, and it would be about $2, and I will get it, and it will have happened. But I didn't because I wanted to be part of that journey, and that's what Tim Schafer was selling. And I'm going to sort of come to an end talking about King Arthur Flower. I promised I'd talk about something which is a little bit non-digital. So Flower, pretty undigital product. King Arthur Flower was the 5th largest miller in the United States. It's now the 2nd largest on the back of a curve strategy. So its starting point, well, here's a curve. It's got a YouTube channel. I mean, pretty well every brand has a YouTube channel. Some of them are rubbish. I'm going to be mean to Penguin now. Penguin has a YouTube channel. My video is on there that you've seen, sandwiched between Claire Balding talking about horses and Emma Thompson talking about Peter Rabbit. And the number of people who are interested in all three of those things is vanishingly small. So as a channel, a relationship strategy, it totally sucks. If they could build a channel which had me and Malcolm Gladwell and Eric Rees and all sorts of other, Seth Godin, I'd be very happy, obviously, from my point of view. But that has a chance of building an enduring relationship with people. But just here is every book that I publish with a video is a kind of flawed curve strategy, as you can imagine. What King Arthur Flower did was at the YouTube end, it has videos. Does anybody here bake? Put your hand up if you bake. Has anybody ever used the American cup system for baking? It sucks. It really sucks. Their most popular video is something which says how to measure a cup of flour. You'd kind of think it was obvious, but it turns out that if you scoop flour out like that, the weight of the flour compacts itself and you get 20% more flour than if you do it by the approved method of pouring it in with a spoon. So you didn't know you were going to learn about baking today. 20% extra flour will ruin your choux pastry when you go to cook it. So that's their most popular video. It's 50 seconds long. It's really short. It's very practical. They have a website full of recipes and ideas, as you'd expect. They have a helpline full of helpful middle-aged ladies who you call up and say, hello, my choux pastry isn't working. And they say, did you measure the right amount of flour? And send you back to the beginning. They sell flour in shops, as you would expect. They sell from their website, they sell books, and they sell rolling pins. And as an author, I am deeply disturbed that rolling pins are worth 3 times as much as books, but they are. But at the top end, for $500, they say, come to our headquarters in Vermont, and we'll do a masterclass in choux pastry, starting with how to measure flour. And you will learn how to be an expert. But not only that, you will be meeting like-minded people. You will be saying something about yourself to yourself and others. This is the sort of thing I believe in. And each person will go back to towns and villages and suburbs across America, little marketing bombs dropping back all over the country. And people will turn to them and say, you know how to bake. How did you learn it? And they say, watch the video, use King Arthur Flower, go to masterclasses. And the cycle kind of repeats and starts again. It's a marketing strategy which says, sure, I still make most of my money by selling flour to the 80% of people who are just looking at the brand in the shop and just go, that one. That's still where most of my money comes from. But this stuff, this continuum from free entry points through basic flour you get in the shop all the way up to direct relationships with your biggest fans is part of a coherent strategy. Again, we've talked a lot about the coherence of the furniture and the matching luggage and the behavioural stuff. It's part of those coherence, and it creates a better story at this heart. Me personally, with my books, there's a whole bunch of people who will buy my books from Amazon or Sainsbury's, and I will never know who they are, and that's okay. I have been paid for Sainsbury's and Amazon to market my book to people and my ideas. 10 or 20% of those people have the potential to go on up here. My job is to say, you've got my book by whatever mechanism. I give away a whole bunch of free stuff on my website. Sure, the objective of that is to sell books. But it's not really to do that. It's to get people on the marketing journey. I slightly failed in the hardback. I didn't put strong enough calls to action to get people to come to my website. So in the paperback edition, we've added case studies at the back and a promise that I will keep writing more, so you should come to my website, with the idea that you buy this in Sainsbury's or Amazon. If you just go, whatever, I'll pick up the next business book that comes out and move on, you were never going to move along the curve. I've made the money from you that I can. But if you did like it, you can come to my website. I notice it's my website, not a Penguin website, which is quite important to me, and they haven't cottoned onto that yet, which eventually they will. It's my website, and they sign up for my email list, and they sign up for my marketing to sell consultancy or further products or things in the future. And if, let's hope this doesn't happen, I fall out with Penguin and I come along with the next book and I've got 10,000 people already signed up to my mailing list for those things, that makes me a much more marketable author. And not only that, I don't even need to use a publisher I don't want to, which puts me in a much stronger negotiating position. So I still love Sainsbury's and Amazon and Waterstones and everybody else selling my stuff around here. It's a very important marketing tool for which I get paid. But this end and this end connect together to build a coherent whole, which is an incredibly powerful strategy for me as an individual, and hopefully for you as larger organisations. So my summary slide, you've got to love the free people. They provide context, you never know when they're going to convert, and they provide word of mouth and all the stuff you already fully understand in terms of viral marketing. You need to love your super fans, because for some of you, they will be the only people who ever give you any money. So that's really, really important. And you need to love everybody in between, because everybody's on a journey from one end to the other, and you are trying to help them make that transition. So love your freeloaders, love your superfans, love everybody in between. I'm Nicholas Lovell. I love you all. Thank you very much.